From catastrophic karate chops to horrifying heroics, he's caused more trouble than a jellyfish swarm at a pool party. Today, we're diving into the absolute carnage of Patrick's worst offenses. Brace yourself, it's gonna get messy. And Patrick wastes no time trading his clueless charm for chaos in Karate Chop. We open on SpongeBob in his kitchen, casually engaging in some harmless artistic karate by chopping a pineapple into the shape of Gary. Yes, it's bloody weird, but it's SpongeBob, so we roll with it. Enter Patrick, who's here for cheese because, of course he is. But instead of cheese, he finds SpongeBob choking on a fly. And how does Patrick save his best friend? With a Heimlich maneuver? No. Patrick punches SpongeBob so hard he flies across the room. Hey, the fly's out, and SpongeBob's eternally grateful. So grateful that he offers Patrick anything in return, so Patrick demands karate lessons. And this, my friends, is where things start to spiral. SpongeBob, being SpongeBob, is all too willing to oblige, even though we all know this is a terrible idea. He tries to teach Patrick.
Okay, let's start off simple. This is a basic move called the inverted whirlpool.
But Patrick's version is more like full-on disaster whirlpool. One failed lesson leads to another, with Patrick leaving a literal trail of destruction in his wake. A lemonade stand gets obliterated, brick walls get annihilated, and Patrick's inability to stop spinning turns him into a dang wrecking ball with a starfish face. SpongeBob tries to salvage the situation, only for Patrick to karate chop a cinder block, a steel sword, and eventually an entire boat in half.
Better luck next time.
By now, SpongeBob has realized this was a huge-ass mistake and gives Patrick the obligatory Spider-Man speech about power and responsibility before heading off to work. Big mistake leaving the starfish unsupervised. Because as soon as SpongeBob's out of sight, Patrick's chopping spree begins. And when I say chopping spree, I mean bloody everything. He's chopping arcade games. He's chopping spinach. At this point, the only thing safe from Patrick's karate chops is the air itself. Fast forward to the Krusty Krab, where a man bursts in screaming about a mad chopper terrorizing Bikini Bottom. SpongeBob immediately knows it's Patrick, because duh, and sets out to stop him. Meanwhile, Patrick is living his best destructive life at the ice cream shop, stacking his cone with every flavor under the sea. But when the bill comes over $80, Patrick offers a lollipop as payment. And when that doesn't fly, Patrick chops the glass counter, downs the ice cream, and waddles out, having gained so much weight that he's now too large to fit through the door. Solution? Chop the door! Problem solved, for Patrick at least. By the time SpongeBob catches up, Patrick has officially lost control of his karate chopping arm, which has somehow developed a mind of its own. Don't get me started on this logic. Things escalate quickly. Patrick takes his rampage to the bargain mart, where he completely obliterates the place, mistaking a pack of kitchen sponges for SpongeBob's carcass. Yes, he genuinely believes he's accidentally chopped his best friend to death. A store clerk sets him straight, pointing out the actual SpongeBob, who is unconscious and crushed under debris. Cue Patrick's guilt-fueled moment of self-awareness. He's so horrified by his actions that he rips off his own karate-chopping hand in dramatic fashion. Don't worry though, this is Bikini Bottom, where body parts grow back as easily as plot holes get ignored. Patrick's hand regenerates immediately, and he solemnly swears never to use karate again. To atone for his crimes, he attempts to rebuild the bargain mart. Badly, like duct tape and bubblegum levels of badly. But hey, it's the thought that counts. In typical Patrick fashion, his chaotic rampage is never truly addressed. Bikini Bottom's residents will just have to live with the aftermath of his karate-fueled reign of terror. And SpongeBob? Well, he's probably regretting every decision that led to this disaster. But that's just another day in Bikini Bottom, where friendship is eternal, but common sense is definitely optional. And in Stuck in the Ringer, he proves once again that when it comes to making bad decisions worse, he's in a league of his own. The episode kicks off with SpongeBob enjoying a nice, wholesome morning shower. Classic SpongeBob, clean, cheerful, and ready to tackle the day. But as soon as he steps out, the universe decides, nah, let's ruin this guy's week. He nearly slips on a bar of soap, does a victory dance for avoiding disaster, jinxing himself obviously, and then gets absolutely obliterated by a rogue rubber duck. Slipping on the soap again, he lands butt first in his ringer. And just like that, SpongeBob is stuck like a sitting duck. Enter Patrick. Our starfish friend struts in looking for his precious rubber duck. Yeah, the one our spongy boy slipped on, and he's completely ignoring the fact that SpongeBob is visibly in distress. SpongeBob tries to explain his predicament, but Patrick interrupts, insisting he knows exactly how to help. He doesn't. Patrick whips out Forever Glue, because who doesn't keep industrial strength adhesive on hand for emergencies, and permanently glues SpongeBob into the ringer. If there's a bad friend Olympics, Patrick just took home gold. Now, stuck for real and not just play, SpongeBob tries to carry on with his life, but guess what? Living in a ringer is a bloody nightmare. At the Krusty Krab, he accidentally turns the place into a demolition zone just by existing. Krabs bans SpongeBob until
that destructive device of yours is gone!
Not because SpongeBob's struggling, mind you, but because it's hurting his precious profits. Classic Krabs. Patrick catches up with SpongeBob outside. When SpongeBob vents about his rough day, Patrick hits him with,
I know what always makes you feel better.
ice cream! Sweet idea in theory, except SpongeBob can't actually eat the ice cream because the ringer has clamped down on his esophagus. Just when you think it couldn't get worse, Patrick suggests a trip to the carnival. Why? Because clearly the solution to being glued into a ringer is carnival games. The carnival is where things go from bad to existential crisis. SpongeBob can't play a single game or enjoy any rides because, shocker, he's glued into a feckin' ringer. Meanwhile, Patrick is living his best life, winning prizes and snacking on carnival treats without a care in the world. The breaking point? Patrick offering SpongeBob cotton candy as if he can magically consume it through sheer willpower. SpongeBob finally snaps. He unleashes all his frustration on Patrick, yelling that his life is in shambles because of him. To really drive the point home, our spongy boy even quotes Krabs, shouting,
Help! I think you've helped quite enough today.
Brutal, dude. Patrick, of course, breaks down into tears, claiming he was only trying to help, but instead of siding with SpongeBob, the crowd of random fish turn on him. Sandals, you know, the fish with a chocolate voice, steps in to deliver the ultimate mic drop.
You know, kid, your body isn't the problem. It's your heart.
Excuse me? Did everyone just forget that Patrick glued him into the ringer? But no, SpongeBob's the bad guy here. Apparently, standing up for yourself is a crime in Bikini Bottom. Moral of the story, don't let Patrick anywhere near adhesives, and if you ever get stuck in a ringer, prepare to be gaslit by an entire underwater mob. And from adhesives to accessories, Patrick's spiral knows no bounds. In No Hat for Pat, he takes one look at SpongeBob's hat and says, yeah, that's my new personality. Patrick marches to the Krusty Krab with the conviction of someone who's never worked a day in his life and gets hired by Mr. Krabs, whose standards are somehow lower than Bikini Bottom's ocean floor. The job? Stand outside and bring in tourists. The reward? A hat. Seems simple enough, but Patrick, being bloody Patrick, manages to mess it up. Customers are getting lost, wandering into who knows where, while Patrick's probably daydreaming about jellyfish. Krabs realizes Patrick's accidental falling fits are more entertaining than actual food, and just like that, the Krusty Krab turns into a low-budget circus. And the highlight is watching Patrick literally throw himself into pain for the crowd's amusement while Mr. Krabs rakes in the cash. Meanwhile, Squidward, who can't resist showing off, attempts to elevate the performance with his clarinet skills. Of course, he scares everyone away faster than Patrick could have. Things escalate when Patrick's clumsy pratfalls lose their novelty, so Krabs cranks up the danger, turning Patrick into a stunt star. SpongeBob tries to intervene like the responsible friend he occasionally is, but Patrick's too hooked on his new role and the power of the hat. Cue Patrick's piece de resistance, a death-defying fall into a bucket of spiky sea urchins. Squidward gets dragged into it, of course, because if there's a disaster, Squidward has to suffer. In a wild AF turn of events, Squidward ends up falling instead while Patrick is left hanging, literally, and simply says,
Thanks, Squidward!
Turns out the hat was the secret behind Patrick's newfound clumsiness all along. Who knew? When the customers realize they paid to watch Squidward fall instead of Patrick, they rebel, demand refunds, and straight up strip Mr. Krabs of his dignity and his clothes. Honestly, it's the karma we've been waiting for. But don't worry, Patrick gets fired, finally, and SpongeBob gives him a consolation hat because friendship. And just like that, Bikini Bottom's most chaotic duo is back to their regularly scheduled nonsense. Patrick should never be trusted with anything. And Mr. Krabs, maybe stop using your employees as crash test dummies. As if we needed more proof that Patrick's a walking disaster, his next act involves channeling his inner hero, or more accurately, his inner catastrophe, in the episode Patrick Man. Our tale kicks off with SpongeBob innocently heading to work only to encounter Patrick sobbing like someone told him ice cream was banned. Turns out he's jealous of SpongeBob's Krusty Krab hat. Instead of, doing anything logical, Patrick decides the best way to cope is to reinvent himself as a superhero. Enter Patrick Man, a menace in tights with a knack for misunderstanding literally everything. After slapping together a costume that screams last-minute Halloween clearance, Patrick debuts his superhero persona at the Krusty Krab. Mr. Krabs, Squidward, and SpongeBob are instantly unimpressed, but Patrick's got bigger fish to fry, or so he thinks. He's off to save Bikini Bottom whether it wants saving or not. Patrick's first heroic act? Stopping two students from high-fiving because clearly that's an act of violence. Next, he accuses Krabs of trying to steal a stray dollar when the old cheapskate was just chasing it across the street. And let's not forget poor Mrs. Puff. While trying to rescue a student trapped in a car, Patrick Man accuses her of Grand Theft Auto and arrests her. At this point, it's safe to say Patrick Man is less about saving the day and more about ruining everyone else's. Back at the Krusty Krab, Patrick takes his chaos up a notch, harassing customers under the guise of unmasking villains. He nearly decapitates Fred and scares off paying patrons until, surprise, he actually unmasks the Dirty Bubble disguised as Mabel. Finally, Patrick Man's superhero shtick might pay off. But no, it's Patrick, so of course things spiral into bloody chaos. He hurls barrels, condiments, and even our spongy boy at the Dirty Bubble, all to no effect. Instead, he just wrecks the Krusty Krab and concusses Squidward. Classic brah. When the Dirty Bubble finally charges him, Patrick accidentally pops him by bending over to pick up a Krabby Patty. Yes, Patrick Man saves the day with his butt. Victory secured, Patrick promptly retires from hero life because, in his words,
having a job is too much work.
Naturally, Mr. Krabs hands him a broom and dustpan, making him clean up the mess he caused. And so, Patrick Man's short-lived career ends not with a bang, but with mopping. Patrick should just stick to jellyfishing and leave the superhero stuff too. And after that crash course in poor decision-making, Patrick decides it's time to add surfing to his resume in SpongeBob vs. the Big One. It's a scorcher in Bikini Bottom, and the Krusty Krab is emptier than Mr. Krabs' wallet after a sale at Anchor Arms. Desperate for business, Krabs drags SpongeBob and Squidward to Goo Lagoon, where Patrick and Sandy are conveniently chilling. But because it's Patrick, relaxing isn't on the agenda. Nope, our guy hops onto the grill's platform like it's a pogo stick, tips the whole setup into the ocean, and voila! Everyone's scattered across the sea like soggy confetti. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward wash up on an island with a bunch of surfer bros who look like they haven't seen a textbook since kindergarten. One dude even says,
"The ocean works in mysterious ways,"
with another adding,
"And waves."
Meanwhile, Mr. Krabs is stuck battling the Flying Dutchman in some weird cash register custody fight, and Sandy's busy building a 5-star luxury resort from scratch. Honestly, Sandy's the MVP here. She should leave them all behind and run Bikini Bottom's version of Amazon. Back on the island, SpongeBob shits himself because their only way home is to ride the Big One, a mythical wave that's basically the ocean's version of a roller coaster on steroids. The surfers send them to find Jack Kahuna Laguna, JKL, the ultimate wave guru. But do they immediately search for him? No. Patrick gets distracted by everything: scenery, snacks, probably his own reflection. After a solid eternity, they stumble upon JKL, who gives off strong surfing Yoda vibes, and spends half the day riding waves while they watch like tourists at an aquarium. Eventually, JKL agrees to teach them the secrets of surfing, which apparently involves staring into a campfire like it's going to whisper the meaning of light. Squidward calls BS on the whole thing, but Patrick is all in because, well, when is he not buying into nonsense? Fast forward to the big showdown. The planets align and the legendary wave arrives. JKL tells them that someone must sacrifice themselves for the wave to stay rideable, and Patrick doesn't volunteer. Instead, he faceplants spectacularly and loses his board almost immediately, leaving our spongy boy to save everyone's starfish-shaped butts. Krabs shows up mid-chaos, loses his beloved cash register Cashy to the wave, and JKL dives in for the heroic save, sacrificing himself to get them all home. But plot twist, JKL somehow survives the big one because, let's face it, this is SpongeBob logic. Everyone washes up back at Goo Lagoon, where Sandy crash lands her coconut-powered helicopter like an astronaut making a pit stop. The beachgoers mistake her for an alien, but hey, at least she's thriving, bras. The episode wraps up with a luau. Nothing says we almost died horribly like shaking your fins to beach tunes. Patrick, he's just vibing, completely unaware that his antics turned a chill beach day into an apocalyptic surfing odyssey. Typical. If Patrick's around, chaos is guaranteed, so maybe invest in a sturdy life jacket. Just when you thought a life jacket might save you from Patrick's chaos, he ups the ante by turning SpongeBob's life into a true crime spectacle in the episode Life of Crime. Krabs is popping off about how thieves are the absolute worst until our dynamic, witted duo calls him out for his collection of borrowed goods. Seriously, the crustaceans got more stolen booty than a pirate yard sale. But Krabs gives them the pro tip that borrowing is totally fine as long as you return it before anyone notices. What could possibly go wrong with that advice? Fast forward to our Patrick wanting a balloon.
SpongeBob, I want a balloon really, really badly.
Dude, the eyes! Looks like a balloon addict. They're broke, shocker, but they've got Mr. Krabs' borrow don't steal mantra fresh in their sponge and starfish brains. So, they snag a balloon and bounce, giggling about all the fun they're going to have. But before they can even get creative, the balloon pops. Instant meltdown. Since there's no way to return a deflated balloon, they figure they've crossed the line into full-blown criminal territory. To make things worse, they bump into the balloon vendor who's ready to spill the beans. It's National Free Balloon Day. But do they stick around to hear that? Nope. They sprint away like they just robbed a bank, convinced that Bikini Bottom's finest are hot on their tails. Now, fugitives, SpongeBob and Patrick go full Survivor Bikini Bottom. They set up camp in the wilderness and lament their criminal lifestyle. Patrick's missing civilization after about 5 minutes, but SpongeBob tries to lift their spirits by pulling out 2 chocolate bars, their only food for the rest of their balloon-pinching lives. Big mistake. Patrick devours his in 2 bites, immediately forgets he ate it, and then accuses SpongeBob of stealing his chocolate bar, and that's when the gloves come off. SpongeBob tries to reason with Patrick, even offering to split his bar, but Patrick's too busy playing Judge Judy to hear it. Frustrated, SpongeBob eats the whole thing out of spite, which sends Patrick into full betrayal mode. What's a starfish to do? Snitch on his best friend, of course! The two race to the police station, each determined to tattle first, but when they confess to stealing the balloon, the officer bursts out laughing. Turns out they didn't commit a crime after all. It was National Free Balloon Day, remember? SpongeBob and Patrick are let off with a couple of lollipops as a consolation prize for their idiocy. But Patrick immediately eats his lollipop, forgets, and accuses everyone in the room of stealing it. So yeah, don't take legal advice from Mr. Krabs, and maybe don't trust Patrick with dessert, or common sense. Now it's time to hang on tight because what's coming next is a greasy, chaotic mess that only Bikini Bottom could serve up in the Fry Cook Games. It's the 21st annual Fry Cook Games, Bikini Bottom's version of the Olympics, but with way more cholesterol. This year, it's not just about Mr. Krabs and Plankton's petty rivalries. Our spongy boy is stepping up to represent the Krusty Krab. He's out here stretching, warming up, and probably planning his gold medal acceptance speech. Enter Patrick, who casually strolls into the stadium like he owns the place and decides he wants in on the action. But there's one small problem. Patrick ain't no fry cook. When SpongeBob points this out, Patrick brushes it off like fry cooking is as simple as opening a jar of mayonnaise. Words are exchanged, friendship bracelets are metaphorically snapped in half, and Patrick storms off, vowing to become a fry cook just to prove SpongeBob wrong. Cue the drama bomb. Plankton rolls up with his contender, a literal giant fish who looks like he could bench press an entire chum bucket. But wait, it's just a distraction. Strapped to this fish's back is none other than Patrick, who's somehow been hired as a fry cook at the Chum Bucket in the last 5 minutes. SpongeBob is shook, bras. His bestie has joined the dark side, the betrayal, the audacity. With SpongeBob and Patrick officially rivals, Krabs and Plankton stir the pot by egging them on. Nothing like two grown business fish manipulating their underpaid employees for personal glory, right? The game kicks off with the deep fry pole vault. SpongeBob nails it with a perfect jumbo flip, while Patrick lands, less gracefully, turning some unfortunate audience members into crispy fish sticks. But don't count Patrick out. He rebounds in the chocolate high dive with a dive so elegant it'd make dolphins weep. The two keep trading victories, and it all boils down to the final event, bun wrestling. This is where things turn into an absolute shit show. The bell rings and SpongeBob rips off his robe to reveal, wait for it, ripped muscles. Like, did he do an entire superhero workout montage in secret? Not to be outdone, Patrick dramatically tears off 2 layers of clothing to reveal his equally shredded bod. And then it's on. The fight turns into a fevered dream of dirty tricks and absurdity. Patrick, in the midst of this, declares,
Forget the Chum Bucket! This is personal!
And licks SpongeBob's foot. Gross. SpongeBob erases part of Patrick's name tag to mess with his identity, and they're pulling moves that would make even professional wrestlers take note. The chaos builds until their pants just give up entirely, and underneath, both are wearing underwear in the colors of their best friend. Typical. The realization of their friendship melts their rage faster than hot butter on a Krabby Patty. They drop the competition, hug it out, and walk out of the arena arm in arm. The crowd boos, Mr. Krabs and Plankton lose their crap, and the whole event ends with Patrick casually noting that his underwear wasn't pink when he bought it. Why, Patrick? Why? Friendships are forever, but fry cook rivalries? Those are just deep-fried distractions. So Patrick's pink underwater revelation? Traumatizing. But now it's Squidward's turn to take center stage in jellyfishing, where even a crystal ball would have warned him to just stay in bed. It all starts with SpongeBob and Patrick prepping for their favorite pastime, jellyfishing. These two are so hyped they literally slide down ropes, setting their hands on fire. Yeah, safety as usual is just a suggestion in Bikini Bottom. They invite Squidward to join, but he brushes them off with a sarcastic,
Oh, that would be the best day ever in my book!
Of course, our spongy boy's sarcasm detector is as broke AF as ever, so he actually believes Squidward wants to hang out. Patrick, meanwhile, assumes Squidward's anti-jellyfishing stance is proof he hates them, but SpongeBob convinces him otherwise. Denial is a powerful thing, kids. Squidward bikes off to enjoy his day away from their chaos, but Destiny and a rogue jellyfish have other plans. He gets his tentacles tangled in his bike pedals, careens off a cliff, and somehow explodes at the bottom. SpongeBob logic at its finest. When he reappears later, he's in a wheelchair, fully mummified in bandages with just his eyes peeking out. At this point, most people would let him rest. Not SpongeBob and Patrick. No, they decide the best way to cheer him up is to give him the
Best day ever!
first stop, Squidward's house. Patrick offers him alphabet soup, but instead of feeding him, he scalds Squidward repeatedly by blowing it into his bandaged face. SpongeBob decides music might help and grabs Squidward's clarinet. The result? A horrifying cacophony as SpongeBob's lips turn into a desert, prompting Patrick to snatch the clarinet in disgust. Conclusion? Soup and music are a no-go. So naturally, they turn to jellyfishing. What's better than tossing an already injured squid into a field of stinging sea creatures? SpongeBob delegates the task of giving Squidward a net to Patrick, who, after a series of failed attempts, just stabs it through Squidward's cast-covered hand. That poor squid. Initially, Squidward just wheels along in silent despair, but then a jellyfish stings him, igniting his inner fury, and probably PTSD. Armed with a net, he chases the jellyfish like a squid possessed, eventually catching it and banging it against a nearby pink blob. Surprise! The pink blob is a queen jellyfish and she is not amused. She zaps Squidward with a sting so massive that even SpongeBob and Patrick stop cheering. The next day, SpongeBob and Patrick, now covered in band-aids because karma's a bitch, visit Squidward, who's now hooked up to life support. They try to apologize with the jellyfish he caught, but when Squidward frees it, their heartfelt gesture backfires. The jellyfish chases them off, stinging them repeatedly, leaving Squidward laughing for the first time all episode. But wait, Karma's not done with them yet. The queen jellyfish returns to deliver one final sting, leaving Squidward a charred, shattered mess. His only reaction? A weak, defeated, ow. Stay far, far away from Patrick when he's feeling helpful. Your life, or what's left of it, will thank you. And now for a detour into the wilderness with Club SpongeBob, a survival story where Patrick proves that bad luck is his natural habitat. The madness begins with SpongeBob and Patrick giggling like school kids in their treehouse, speaking in some bizarre W-heavy secret code.
Way, look! It's Squidward!
Squidward, biking to work and already over it, gets dragged into their nonsense when they tell him he doesn't
Fit in!
Big mistake. Squidward's ego won't let that slide, so he climbs the tree in full I'll show you mode, only to discover their insult wasn't even about him, it was literally about the treehouse. Turns out SpongeBob and Patrick have been stuck in this rickety-as-shit box for 3 days. As if that wasn't bad enough, Squidward accidentally launches the entire treehouse into the sky, sending all 3 of them hurtling into the middle of nowhere. The kelp forest becomes their new home, where logic takes a back seat and blind faith in a cheap plastic toy reigns supreme. Enter the magic conch shell. SpongeBob and Patrick treat this thing like it's the damn Oracle of Delphi, refusing to take a single step without consulting it. The conch's advice?
Nothing.
And they actually listen. They sit on the ground like toddlers in a timeout while Squidward spirals into survivalist mode trying to escape the forest on his own. Yeah, he fails miserably and winds up back where he started, angrier and hungrier than before. Fast forward a bit, and Squidward's descent into madness is in full swing. He's built himself a shelter out of the treehouse rubble, rocking a 5 o'clock shadow and a bug-roasting diet. Honestly, his skills are pretty epic. He taunts SpongeBob and Patrick with his superior survival skills, laughing in their faces about their blind faith in the conch. But then, because Karma's a bitch, a literal plane drops food supplies directly onto SpongeBob and Patrick. The 2 believers are suddenly feasting like kings while Squidward stands there questioning his life choices. Humbled and desperate, Squidward tries to rejoin their little club, but there's a catch. The conch now calls the shots. Squidward, reduced to groveling, asks it for permission to eat anything, just a crumb, but the conch denies him at every turn. When it starts mocking him in its creepy monotone, Squidward looks about 2 seconds away from a mental breakdown. Just as things hit peak absurdity, a park ranger shows up. You'd think he'd be a voice of reason, right? Nope. This guy's just as brainwashed as SpongeBob and Patrick, pulling out his own magic conch and praising it like it's the holy dang grail. Squidward is now completely surrounded by conch worshippers, and his last ounce of resistance crumbles. By the end, he's sitting in the dirt, praising the conch like everyone else, because apparently you can't beat them, so you might as well join them. Don't question the magic conch. Also, maybe let SpongeBob and Patrick enjoy their weird little club in peace. But the real show begins with Fungus Among Us, where Patrick doesn't disappoint. He's about to ruin everything in his usual oblivious style. The episode begins with SpongeBob waking up to his starving pet Gary. SpongeBob tries to feed him some organic snail food, but Gary's not having it. Instead, he eyes a mysterious patch of sea fungus growing on the floor and decides, yep, that's breakfast. SpongeBob freaks the fudge out, but before he can deal with it, Patrick waddles in with some top-tier advice. If something gross is stuck to your head, scratch it like there's no tomorrow. That doesn't work. In fact, it does the exact opposite. By the time SpongeBob heads to the Krusty Krab, the fungus has spread like wildfire. He tries flicking, scraping, and ignoring it, but the more he messes with it, the more it grows. Just ick. It doesn't take long for Squidward to notice his fungal infestation and do what any sane person would: call the Bikini Bottom SWAT team. Before SpongeBob knows it, he's caged, quarantined in his pineapple, and sporting what's probably the worst fungal makeover in history. But wait, it gets worse. Patrick visits SpongeBob mid-quarantine and decides now's the perfect time for some pirate wrestling. He pops SpongeBob's bubble, which is the only thing keeping the fungus contained, and because Patrick is nothing if not persistent, he inflates another bubble like that'll somehow fix the problem. Meanwhile, back at the Krusty Krab, the fungus is spreading faster than Krabby Patty orders during lunch rush. Squidward gets infected and proceeds to contaminate the food. Krabs, of course, cares more about his profits than public health, until the health inspector arrives to deliver the harsh reality. His restaurant is now Bikini Bottom's newest biohazard. SpongeBob shows up, bubble intact, just in time to take the blame. Patrick's help has officially turned the entire town against SpongeBob, who's now crying slimy fungal tears. Just when all hope seems lost, Gary rolls in and saves the day in the most ridiculous way possible by licking the fungus off everyone. Our spongy boy is freaking, but Krabs drops the wisdom that
He's a bottom feeder, remember?
turns out Gary's bottom feeder instincts make him the hero Bikini Bottom didn't know it needed. In true Krabs fashion, he immediately monetizes the chaos, charging $5 a lick as Gary de-icks the entire town. And there you have it, a lesson in why Patrick should never be your life coach, and a reminder that somehow Mr. Krabs always profits from disaster. But hey, I'm just a guy who likes cartoons. Catch you in the next video.